Lieutenant Derek Vasquez raised his voice so everyone at the firing range could hear. 5 bullseyes, you? He laughed, sharp and cold. I'll bet my month's salary you can't even hold the rifle steady, old man. The homeless veteran standing in front of him said nothing. His hands, calloused and dirty, hung at his sides. His beard was matted with dust. The wind from Camp Lejeune's outdoor range blew sand across his worn boots. Vasquez leaned in closer. And just to make it interesting, you do it without blinking. 5 shots, 5 bullseyes, no blinking, or you walk away with nothing. Around them, soldiers and families watched. Some looked uncomfortable. Others grinned, waiting for the show. The homeless man looked at the rifle Vasquez held out. Then he looked at the plate of food sitting on the table behind him. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. He nodded once. All right. If you're watching this story from anywhere in the world, we'd love to know where you're joining us from. Drop a comment below telling us your city or country, and if stories like this one about courage, sacrifice, and second chances speak to you, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us share more incredible true stories that honor the forgotten heroes among us. Now, let's continue. Marcus Callahan had been living under the I-95 bridge for 4 years. Every morning he woke to the sound of tires humming overhead, the vibration rattling through the concrete pillars. The rhythm had become a clock, a brutal reminder that time kept moving, even when his life had stopped. He kept his belongings in a green military-style backpack. Inside, a broken tactical binocular his commander had given him in 2010, a folded photograph of his Force Reconnaissance team, and an empty coffee tin where he stored $6.30. He didn't panhandle. He didn't beg aggressively. When people passed, he nodded. When they ignored him, he understood. He had become invisible. That was easier than being seen. Most days Marcus walked. He had a route, 7 miles through Jacksonville, North Carolina, past the library, past the VA office that had put him on an 18-month waiting list, past the diner where he used to eat breakfast before the money ran out. He never asked for anything. He just walked. It kept his mind occupied. It kept the memories at bay. But on the morning of October 14th, Marcus changed his route. He walked toward Camp Lejeune. He had heard about the Family Day event from another veteran who lived near the overpass. Barbecue, games, shooting demonstrations, and most importantly, food. Maybe if he timed it right, if he stayed quiet and respectful, someone would hand him a plate of leftovers. It had worked before. Not always, but sometimes. The walk took him an hour and a half. His boots, donated by a church group 2 years ago, were splitting at the soles. Each step sent a dull ache through his feet. But Marcus had learned to ignore pain. Physical pain was easy. It was the other kind that kept him awake at night. When he reached the base, the gates were open. Families streamed in, waving at the guards. Children wore tiny Marine Corps T-shirts. Fathers carried coolers. Mothers held the hands of toddlers. Marcus stayed to the side near the fence line, watching. He didn't belong here, not anymore. But hunger has a way of making you brave or desperate. He wasn't sure which. He walked slowly toward the main area, keeping his head down. The smell of grilled meat hit him like a wave. His stomach clenched. He hadn't eaten since Thursday. It was Saturday now. A young boy, maybe 9 years old, stared at him as he passed. The boy's father noticed and pulled him closer, whispering something Marcus couldn't hear. Marcus didn't take it personally. He knew what he looked like. His jacket was torn at the shoulder, the fabric stiff with dirt and sweat. His jeans were caked with mud from the riverbank. His face was weathered, skin stretched tight over sharp cheekbones. And then there was the scar. A long, vertical burn mark on the right side of his neck, starting just below his ear and disappearing under his collar. Fallujah, 2004. A grenade had exploded too close. He had been lucky to survive. Sometimes he wondered if luck was the right word. Lieutenant Derek Vasquez noticed him immediately. Vasquez was 29, lean and muscular, with sharp features and a jawline that looked like it had been carved for recruitment posters. He was the top-rated marksman instructor at Camp Lejeune. He had won regional competitions 3 years in a row. His office wall was covered with plaques and certificates. He had an ego that needed constant feeding, and today, in front of dozens of people, he saw an opportunity to feed it. He set down his coffee and walked toward Marcus with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. His boots crunched loudly on the gravel. Deliberate, performative. Hey you. Marcus stopped. He turned slowly. You lost, buddy? Vasquez asked, his voice loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Marcus shook his head. No, sir. Just wondering if there's any food left over. I can take it to go, won't bother anyone. Vasquez let out a sharp laugh. Food? You want a handout? He turned to the crowd, arms spread wide. This guy wants a handout. A few people chuckled nervously. Others looked away, uncomfortable. Vasquez's wife, Emily, 7 months pregnant and sitting at a nearby table, tugged at his sleeve when he passed. Derek, come on. Just let him have a plate. Vasquez ignored her. He walked closer to Marcus, circling him slowly, like a wolf sizing up wounded prey. You claim you were military, let me guess. You'll tell me you were a Marine, right? That you served your country. Marcus met his eyes. His voice was quiet but steady. I was. Vasquez scoffed. Sure you were. And I'm a Navy SEAL. More laughter rippled through the crowd. Sergeant Ray Holder, Vasquez's friend and fellow instructor, joined in from the side. Man, they all say that. Every homeless guy on the street claims he was Special Forces or a Ranger or something. Vasquez crossed his arms, his grin widening. All right, old man, I'll make you a deal. You want food? Earn it. Marcus didn't move. He had learned over the years on the streets not to react, not to hope, not to expect fairness. Hope was dangerous. It made the falls hurt worse. Vasquez gestured toward the shooting range, where targets were set up at various distances. See those targets? 100 meters out. I'll give you 5 rounds. You get 5 bullseyes consecutive and I'll give you a full plate of food. Hell, I'll even throw in a $20 bill. He paused, his grin turning cruel. But here's the catch. You do it without blinking, not once. 5 shots, 5 bullseyes, eyes wide open the whole time. Think you can handle that, Marine? The crowd grew quiet. This wasn't funny anymore. This was humiliation. Captain Lisa Brennan, a 41-year-old logistics officer with 16 years of service, stood near the grill with her arms folded. She frowned. She didn't like where this was going, but she didn't intervene. Not yet. Marcus looked at the range, then at the food table, where ribs and corn and potato salad sat under aluminum foil, then back at Vasquez. His throat was dry. His hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear. From hunger, from exhaustion, from 4 years of surviving on scraps. And if I miss? He asked. Vasquez shrugged, theatrical. Then you walk away empty-handed and everyone here gets a good laugh. The silence stretched. Marcus could feel dozens of eyes on him, judging, pitying, mocking. He wanted to leave. He wanted to disappear back to the bridge and pretend this never happened. But he was so tired, so hungry. And something deep inside him, something he thought had died in Helmand Province in 2011, stirred. Just slightly. All right, Marcus said. I'll do it. What Marcus didn't know was that across the base, in the administration building, a database still held his name. A file marked with the call sign, Deadshot. A record of 187 confirmed eliminations across 2 wars. A legend whispered among snipers who trained at Quantico. And the only person who could change how this story ended was a man everyone had already written off. Vasquez handed Marcus the M4 rifle with exaggerated care, holding it out like he was handing a fragile piece of glass to a child. Don't drop it now. It's worth more than anything you own. Marcus took the rifle. The weight was familiar. 27 pounds, fully loaded. His hands, rough and scarred, moved over the weapon with a precision that didn't match his appearance. He ejected the magazine, checked it, checked the chamber, reinserted the magazine with a smooth click. His fingers moved automatically, like a pianist returning to keys after years away. Muscle memory, instinct, things you don't forget, no matter how hard you try. Vasquez noticed the fluidity of the movements. His smile faltered, just slightly. You've held a rifle before, he said, almost accusatory. Marcus didn't answer. He walked to the firing line, his boots dragging slightly in the dirt. The crowd followed, forming a semicircle behind him. Children climbed onto their father's shoulders for a better view. Phones came out. Someone muttered, "This is gonna be sad." Another voice, quieter, said, "I can't watch this." Emily Vasquez stood apart from the group, her hand resting protectively on her belly. She looked at her husband, standing there with his arms crossed and that smug grin on his face, and something inside her twisted. She had fallen in love with a confident man, but confidence had slowly curdled into arrogance. And now cruelty, she whispered, loud enough for him to hear. "Derek, this isn't right." He waved her off without looking. "Relax, babe. He's not going to make it past the first shot. This'll be over in 30 seconds. But Emily wasn't so sure. There was something about the way the homeless man held the rifle, something practiced, something dangerous. Marcus knelt at the firing line. He adjusted his stance, planted his left knee firmly, angled his body at a 45-degree angle to the target. He raised the rifle to his shoulder and pressed his cheek against the stock, feeling the cool metal against his skin. His breathing slowed. In, out, in, out. The world around him began to fade. The laughter, the whispers, the doubt, the cruelty. It all fell away like water sliding off stone. This was a place Marcus knew, a place he had lived in for years, the space between heartbeats, the moment before the shot. In that space there was no pain, no memory, no guilt, just the target. Just the breath, just the trigger. The wind shifted, blowing left to right at about 5 miles per hour. Marcus adjusted his aim fractionally. 0.2 mils. His right eye focused down the scope. His left eye stayed open, scanning peripherally. And then, for the first time in 4 years, Marcus Callahan stopped being a homeless veteran. He became Deadshot again. He exhaled slowly, letting half the air leave his lungs, and fired. The shot cracked through the air like a whip. The bullet screamed downrange and punched through the exact center of the target. Perfect bullseye. The paper fluttered. The crowd murmured, surprised. Vasquez blinked, his arms uncrossing slightly. "Luck," he said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. Marcus didn't respond. He shifted his weight, adjusted the rifle 1 millimeter to the left, and fired again. Bullseye. The murmurs grew louder now. People leaned forward. Phones zoomed in. Marcus's face was blank, emotionless. But inside something was happening. Memories were flooding back. Helmand Province, the ridge. 5 enemy combatants moving toward his team's position. No time to call for air support. No time for backup. Just him. Just his rifle. Just 5 rounds. He fired the 3rd shot. Bullseye. The crowd was silent now. No one was laughing. Captain Brennan stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she watched Marcus's form. She had been in the Marines for 16 years. She had seen thousands of shooters. This wasn't luck. This was elite-level training. This was someone who had done this so many times that it had become reflex. Marcus lined up the 4th shot. His hands were steady. His breathing was controlled. His eyes, bloodshot and exhausted, had not blinked once. Not when the rifle kicked. Not when the crowd gasped. Not when Vasquez's grin finally disappeared. He fired. Bullseye. Sergeant Ray Holder, standing just behind Vasquez, felt a chill run down his spine. He had been shooting competitively for 6 years. He had never seen anyone shoot like this, not under pressure, not without preparation, not without even blinking. "Who the hell is this guy?" Holder whispered. Vasquez didn't answer. His jaw was clenched so tight his teeth hurt. Marcus chambered the 5th and final round. This was it. 5 shots, 5 bullseyes. Just like Helmand, just like the mission that earned him the call sign, the mission that saved his team. The mission that haunted him every single night. He exhaled. The world went silent, and he fired. The bullet flew true. It hit dead center. 5 shots, 5 bullseyes, not a single blink. Marcus lowered the rifle slowly. He set it down carefully on the stand, treating it with the respect it deserved. Then he turned to Vasquez, his face still blank, his voice flat and exhausted, and said, "Can I have the meal now?" For 3 full seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the wind rustling through the trees at the edge of the range. Then Sergeant Ray Holder, standing just behind Vasquez, saw something that made his blood run cold. Marcus's left arm. The rifle had pulled his sleeve up slightly when he fired. There on his forearm was a tattoo, faded but unmistakable. Coordinates: N31-36618, E64-2154, Helmand Province. And below the coordinates, 5 words in block letters: 5 rounds, 5 souls. Holder's face went pale. His lips moved, forming words he couldn't quite believe. "Deadshot," he whispered, then louder. "Oh my God, you're Deadshot." Vasquez turned sharply. "What?" Holder grabbed his shoulder, his hand shaking. "Derek, look at his arm. Look at the tattoo." Vasquez looked. He saw the coordinates. He saw the words. And for the first time in his life, Lieutenant Derek Vasquez felt genuine fear. Captain Brennan heard Holder's voice. Her head snapped toward them. "What did you just say?" Holder's voice cracked. "That's Deadshot, ma'am. That's the call sign from Helmand." Brennan's eyes went wide. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers, typing quickly into the Marine Corps personnel database. "Call sign search, Deadshot." The file loaded. Her breath caught in her throat. Marcus Deadshot Callahan, U.S. Marine Corps Scout Sniper, MOS 0317, Force Reconnaissance, service dates 2001-2012, deployments, Iraq, Afghanistan, 187 confirmed eliminations. Recipient of the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism in Helmand Province 2011. Status: honorably discharged. Last known address: none listed. She looked up at Marcus, who was standing there, quiet and still, waiting for the food he'd been promised. Her hand rose slowly to her forehead. She saluted, sharp, formal. Her voice broke as she spoke. "Sir, we didn't know." Marcus looked at her, confusion crossing his tired face. "I'm not active anymore, ma'am. You don't have to do that." But Sergeant Holder was already on his knees, literally on his knees in the dirt. He had served 8 years. He had trained at Quantico. He had heard the stories, the legend of Deadshot, the Marine sniper who saved his entire Force Recon unit in Helmand by eliminating 5 Taliban fighters in under 30 seconds. All of them moving, all of them over 1,000 meters away, in a sandstorm, with failing equipment. It was a story instructors told recruits to show them what was possible, what excellence looked like. And now that legend was standing in front of him, homeless and hungry, asking for a plate of food. Holder looked up at Marcus like he was looking at a ghost. His voice trembled. "You're him. You're really him. I heard about you at Quantico. They said you were the best sniper the Marines ever produced." Marcus said nothing. He just looked tired, so impossibly tired. The crowd was staring now. Whispers spread like wildfire through the families and soldiers. "Who is he?" "Deadshot. His call sign is Deadshot." "What does that mean?" "He's a legend. A real legend. He saved his entire unit. 187 kills. Navy Cross recipient. And we almost..." Phones that had been recording for mockery were now recording for history. Vasquez stood frozen, his face ashen. The rifle was still on the stand. The target still showed 5 perfect holes, grouped so tightly in the center they almost formed a single tier. He had bet his reputation, his ego, his cruelty. And he had lost to a man he had called worthless. The 9-year-old boy Jacob pushed through the crowd. His father tried to grab him, but Jacob was too quick. He walked right up to Marcus and looked up at him with wide, awestruck eyes. "Are you a superhero?" Marcus looked down at the boy. For the first time since he'd arrived, his expression softened. The hard lines around his eyes eased. He crouched down slowly, his knees protesting, until he was at the boy's level. "No, kid. Just someone who used to be good at something." Jacob's face was serious. "I think you're still good. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen." Marcus's throat tightened. He nodded once, not trusting his voice. Then he reached out and ruffled the boy's hair gently. "You be good to your dad, all right?" Jacob smiled. "I will." Then he ran back to his father, who was watching with tears in his eyes. But the confrontation was only just beginning to unravel. And what happened next would force Marcus to face a question he'd been running from for 4 years. What do you do when the world suddenly remembers who you are, even when you've spent every day trying to forget? Captain Brennan stepped forward, her posture rigid with authority. She turned to Vasquez, and her voice, though quiet, cut through the murmurs like a blade. "Lieutenant Vasquez." Vasquez turned toward her, his face still drained of color, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool October air. "Yes, ma'am." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The disappointment in her tone was enough. "You will apologize. Right now. In front of everyone here." Vasquez's mouth opened, closed. He looked at Marcus, then at the crowd, then at his wife. Emily was staring at him with something that looked like disgust. Her arms were crossed over her belly, her eyes cold. Vasquez swallowed hard. I'm sorry." The words came out weak, barely audible. Captain Brennan's eyes narrowed. "Louder, and with sincerity, Lieutenant." Vasquez cleared his throat. His voice shook. "I'm sorry, I was out of line. I didn't know who you were, and It shouldn't matter who he was," Brennan interrupted sharply. "He's a veteran. He deserves respect regardless of rank or reputation. Do you understand me?" Vasquez nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am." Marcus didn't respond. He just looked at Vasquez for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned away. "Can I have the food now?" he asked again, his voice still flat. Captain Brennan nodded quickly, snapping into action. "Sergeant Holder, get this man a plate, and not leftovers, a full meal. The best we have now." Holder scrambled to his feet and rushed to the grill, nearly tripping over his own boots. The base cook, a large man named Sergeant First Class Davis, looked up in confusion as Holder approached. "I need a full plate. Your best stuff. Everything." Davis frowned. "For who?" "For him," Holder said, pointing at Marcus. Davis looked over, saw the homeless veteran, saw the crowd watching, saw Captain Brennan standing at attention. He didn't ask questions. He loaded up a plate, ribs still steaming from the grill, corn on the cob dripping with butter, potato salad, coleslaw, a thick slice of cornbread, a brownie. He handed it to Holder, who carried it back with both hands like he was carrying something sacred. Marcus took the plate. His hands shook slightly as he gripped it. "Thank you," he said quietly. He walked to an empty picnic table at the far edge of the event area, away from the crowd, away from the stairs. He sat down on the weathered wooden bench, and he ate, slowly, methodically, savoring every bite like a man who hadn't had a real meal in weeks. Because he hadn't. The ribs were tender, falling off the bone. The corn was sweet. The potato salad was creamy and rich. He ate in silence, his head down, focusing only on the food, but he could feel the eyes on him, watching, judging differently now, not with pity or disgust, with something else. Respect, maybe even awe. Marcus didn't want it. He just wanted to eat in peace. Captain Brennan approached the table after a few minutes. She hesitated, then sat down across from him, uninvited but respectful. She waited until he looked up. "Mr. Callahan." Marcus set down his fork, still chewing. He swallowed. "Yes, ma'am? I want to help you. I need to help you." Marcus picked up his fork again. "I'm fine." "With all due respect, sir, you're not fine. You're living under a bridge. You haven't eaten in days. "I'm surviving," Marcus interrupted quietly. "There's a difference." Brennan leaned forward, her voice softening. "You shouldn't have to just survive. Not after what you did for this country. I can get you into the priority veteran transition program here on base. We have housing, clean, safe housing, medical care, full psychiatric support, employment assistance. You shouldn't be out there." Marcus set his fork down again. He looked past her toward the firing range, toward the targets he'd just hit. His voice, when he spoke, was so quiet she almost didn't hear it. "Do you know why I left the service, Captain?" Brennan shook her head. Marcus continued, his eyes distant. "Helmand Province, November 2011. My team was on a reconnaissance mission. We were compromised. 5 Taliban fighters were moving in on our position. We were outnumbered, outgunned, no air support available. Radio was dying, it was on me. He paused, his jaw tightening. So I took the shots. 5 rounds, 5 targets, all moving, all over 1,000 meters out. I saved my team that day. Brennan waited, Marcus's hands clenched into fists on the table. 3 weeks later we were ambushed. IED took out our vehicle. I was thrown clear. Everyone else died. 6 men, good men, husbands, fathers, and I lived. His voice cracked. I was the best shot, the one who was supposed to see everything, and I didn't see that bomb. Brennan's eyes filled with tears. That wasn't your fault. Marcus looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was unbearable. I know that. Up here, he tapped his temple. I know that. But here, he placed his hand over his heart. I can't forgive myself, and every time I close my eyes, I see their faces. I see the explosion. I hear the screams. And I don't know how to live with that. I don't know how to be around people who look at me like a hero when I feel like a failure. The words hung in the air between them. Brennan wiped her eyes quickly. That's exactly why you need help, sir. Professional help. You have PTSD. It's treatable. You don't have to carry this alone. Marcus picked up his fork again, ending the conversation. I appreciate what you're trying to do, ma'am. I really do. But I'm not ready. When will you be ready? Marcus didn't answer. He just kept eating. When Marcus finished his meal, he stood slowly, his joints stiff from sitting. Captain Brennan stood with him. She pulled a business card from her pocket and held it out. Will you at least take my card, in case you change your mind? Marcus hesitated. He looked at the card like it was a live grenade. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it. He slipped it into his jacket pocket without looking at it. Thank you for the food, ma'am, and for your service. He turned to leave, but Brennan called after him. Mr. Callahan. He stopped, but didn't turn around. You're not forgotten. Not by me. Not by anyone here. When you're ready, we'll be here. Marcus nodded once. Then he walked toward the gate. Sergeant Holder was waiting near the exit. He stepped in front of Marcus, blocking his path. In his hands was a white envelope, thick with cash. Sir, please take this. Marcus looked at the envelope. He could see the edge of bills inside, 20s, maybe 50s. He shook his head firmly. I can't. You earned it. More than earned it. That was... I don't even have words for what that was. I didn't do this for money. I did it for a meal. I got the meal. Marcus stepped around him, but Holder moved with him, desperate. Then what can I do? How can I help? Marcus stopped. He looked at Holder, really looked at him, young, eager, sincere, reminded him of the men he'd served with, the men he'd lost. You want to help me? Yes, sir, anything. Marcus's voice was quiet but firm. Then treat the next homeless veteran you see with respect. Don't wait until you find out who they were. Respect them because they served. That's how you help me. Holder's throat tightened. He nodded, unable to speak. Marcus walked past him and out the gate, but Holder wasn't the only one who followed. 30 feet behind, hidden partially by a maintenance building, Emily Vasquez watched Marcus leave. She had heard everything. The story about Helmand, the guilt, the pain, and she thought about her husband, standing back at the range, surrounded by people who were now looking at him with contempt. She thought about the cruelty in his voice when he'd mocked this man, this hero. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling her unborn son kick, and made a decision. When she got home that night, she would tell Derek that she needed space, that she didn't recognize the man he'd become, and that if he wanted to be in their son's life, he needed to change, really change. The walk back to the I-95 bridge took Marcus an hour and a half. The sun was beginning to set by the time he arrived, painting the sky in streaks of orange and deep purple. The temperature was dropping. He could see his breath. He climbed down the embankment carefully, his boots slipping on the loose gravel. When he reached his spot under the concrete pillars, he sat down on the old blanket he used as a bed. The bridge hummed above him with evening traffic. He pulled out Captain Brennan's business card. It was simple, white cardstock, her name, her rank, her phone number, and on the back, written in careful handwriting, a note. You're not forgotten. Call me when you're ready. LB. Marcus stared at it for a long time. His thumb traced the words. Then he folded it carefully and put it back in his pocket next to his heart. He lay down, pulling his torn jacket tight around himself. The cold seeped through the fabric. His stomach was full for the first time in days, but the weight in his chest hadn't lessened. If anything, it felt heavier. Because now people knew. Now the invisibility he'd worked so hard to maintain was gone, and Marcus wasn't sure if he was ready for that. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in months he didn't dream of Helmand. He didn't dream of the explosion. He didn't dream of his team. He dreamed of the boy, Jacob, the one who had looked at him with pure admiration and asked if he was a superhero. And in the dream, Marcus said yes, and it felt good. 3 days passed. Marcus stayed under the bridge, trying to return to his routine. But things were different now. Word had spread beyond the base. The video from the firing range had been shared thousands of times online. Local news stations picked it up. Homeless veteran humiliated by officer, then proves he's a legend. Marine sniper Deadshot found living under bridge. Viral video shows true heroism. People started showing up. Some brought food, others brought blankets, toiletries, even cash. A local church group came with donated clothes and an offer of shelter. Marcus accepted the food and clothes gratefully. He politely declined everything else. "I'm not ready yet," he told them. "But thank you." They left their numbers, their addresses, their offers standing. One woman, elderly and frail, approached him with tears streaming down her face. "My son served in Helmand," she said. "He didn't make it home. But because of men like you, some did. Thank you." She pressed a $50 bill into his hand and walked away before he could refuse. Marcus sat there holding the money and cried. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up near the bridge. 2 men in dark suits stepped out. They were clean-cut, professional, and walked with the kind of confidence that came from either military or law enforcement backgrounds. They climbed down to Marcus's spot carefully, their dress shoes slipping slightly on the gravel. "Mr. Callahan?" one of them asked. Marcus looked up from the book he was reading, a worn copy of Lonesome Dove that someone had left for him. "Yeah? My name is Richard Crane. This is my associate, Mr. Voss. We're from Apex Tactical Solutions. It's a private military contractor." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'm not interested." Crane held up his hands in a placating gesture. "Just hear us out. We've been following your story. What you did at Camp Lejeune, your service record, your reputation. Mr. Callahan, you're one of the best marksmen this country has ever produced. We'd like to offer you a position training new recruits, competitive salary, full benefits, housing included, signing bonus of $50,000. Marcus closed his book slowly. "I said I'm not interested." Voss stepped forward. "Sir, with all due respect, you're wasting away down here. You have a skill set that's worth millions in the private sector. You could be living comfortably, training the next generation, making a real difference." Marcus's voice was cold. "I said no." Crane exchanged a glance with Voss. They weren't used to being turned down. "Why?" Crane asked, genuinely confused. Marcus stood slowly, his full height towering over both men despite his gaunt frame. "Because every time I pick up a rifle, I remember what I did with it. I remember the faces of the people I killed. And I'm not sure I want to teach anyone else to carry that weight, so take your offer and leave." His voice was final, non-negotiable. Crane pulled out a business card anyway and set it on top of Marcus's backpack. "If you change your mind." Marcus didn't respond. He just watched them climb back up the embankment and drive away. As soon as they were gone, he picked up the card and tossed it into the river. He watched it float away, carried by the current until it disappeared. That night, Sergeant Ray Holder came to the bridge. He wasn't in uniform. He wore jeans and a hoodie, and he carried a 6-pack of root beer and 2 bags of fast food. "I'm not here officially," Holder said as he climbed down carefully. "I just wanted to talk, if that's okay." Marcus gestured to the ground next to him. Holder sat, his back against the cold concrete pillar. They ate in silence for a while, the sound of traffic humming above them. Then Holder spoke, his voice hesitant. "I've been in the Marines for 8 years. I thought I was pretty good. I thought Lieutenant Vasquez was the best shooter I'd ever seen. Hell, I looked up to him. He paused, unwrapping his burger. Then I saw you, and I realized I don't know anything. I've been coasting, playing it safe. You showed me what real skill looks like, what real discipline looks like. Marcus shook his head. You know plenty, you're serving, that's what matters. Holder took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, then asked the question that had been eating at him. Why won't you come back? Even just as a civilian instructor. You could teach guys like me. You could save lives by making us better. Marcus was quiet for a long time. He finished his burger before answering. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. Because every time I pick up a rifle, I'm back there. Helmand. The ridge, the sandstorm. I can feel the grit in my teeth. I can hear my spotter calling targets. And I remember what it feels like to take a life. 5 times in 30 seconds. He looked at Holder. I was good at it. Too good. And that scares me. Because a part of me misses it. The clarity, the focus, the purpose. And I don't trust that part of myself. I don't want to teach someone else to become what I was. Holder absorbed this, his expression serious. But you saved your team. You saved lives. That counts for something. That has to count for something. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. It didn't save them 3 weeks later. It didn't stop the bomb. It didn't bring them home. Holder didn't have an answer for that. So he just sat with Marcus in silence, 2 Marines separated by rank and experience, but connected by something deeper. When Holder finally left, he wrote his number on the inside of the paper bag. If you ever need anything at all, day or night, you call me. Promise? Marcus took the bag. I promise. Days turned into weeks. November arrived, bringing colder nights and harsh winds that cut through Marcus's thin jacket. But the support kept coming. A veterans group set up a small tent for him, insulated and waterproof. A local restaurant owner, himself a former Army Ranger, brought hot meals 3 times a week. Captain Brennan checked in every few days, never pushing, just making sure Marcus was okay. Slowly, quietly, something inside Marcus began to shift. He started reading the card Brennan had given him more often. He started thinking about the offer, not the contractor offers, not the money, but the idea of getting real help, of facing the things he'd been running from. One night in late November, Marcus had a dream. He was back on the ridge in Helmand, but this time his team didn't die. This time, they made it home. And when Marcus woke up, he was crying, not from sadness, but from something else, something he hadn't felt in years. Possibility. The next morning, he cleaned himself up as best he could using water from the river and soap someone had left him. He put on the cleanest clothes he had. And he walked back to Camp Lejeune. It took him 2 hours. When he arrived at the administration building, he asked to see Captain Brennan. The receptionist looked at him with suspicion, but when he gave his name, her eyes widened. "Wait here," she said, picking up the phone. Captain Brennan came down within 5 minutes. When she saw Marcus standing in the lobby, clean-shaven for the first time in years, wearing a donated jacket that actually fit, her eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Callahan." Marcus took a deep breath. "I'm ready. I'd like to hear about that transition program, if the offer's still open." Captain Brennan smiled, her voice thick with emotion. "It is. It absolutely is. Come with me." The next 6 months changed Marcus's life. The transition wasn't easy. There were days he wanted to run back to the bridge, days the therapy sessions felt like torture, dragging up memories he'd buried, days he woke up screaming from nightmares. But there were also days of progress, days where he could talk about his team without breaking down, days where he could hold a rifle during training sessions without feeling the weight of guilt, days where he could look in the mirror and see a man, not a ghost. The VA program at Lejeune set him up in a small apartment near the base, 1 bedroom, clean, safe. It felt like a palace after 4 years under a bridge. He was enrolled in a PTSD treatment program that actually helped. Group therapy with other combat veterans, one-on-one sessions with a psychiatrist who understood what war did to a person. And twice a week, he worked as a civilian consultant, teaching advanced marksmanship to Marine Scout Snipers. Marcus didn't talk much during training sessions. He didn't need to. When he demonstrated technique, when he adjusted a recruit's stance with gentle precision, when he lined up a shot and hit the target at 200 meters without effort. He let his skill speak for itself. The recruits called him Mr. Callahan out of respect, but among themselves they whispered his real name, Deadshot. And they spoke it with reverence, the way you speak about legends. Lieutenant Vasquez was transferred to a different unit 2 months after the incident. His reputation never recovered. The video haunted him. Comments on social media were brutal. This is what happens when ego meets reality. Respect your veterans. Vasquez should be dishonorably discharged. His superiors reprimanded him formally. He lost his position as lead marksmanship instructor. Emily left him 4 months after the incident, taking their newborn son with her. She filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. In the paperwork, she wrote one sentence that cut deeper than any of the rest. I don't want our son to grow up thinking cruelty is strength. Vasquez tried to rebuild. He apologized publicly. He volunteered at veteran outreach programs. But the damage was done. Every time someone looked at him, he saw judgment, and he knew he deserved it. Marcus, on the other hand, never spoke about Vasquez. When people asked, when reporters tried to get a comment, he simply said, "Everyone deserves a second chance, even him." Because Marcus knew something most people didn't. The hardest person to forgive is yourself, and he was still learning how. One Saturday afternoon in late spring, Marcus was walking through a park near the base. The weather was warm, families were having picnics, children were playing on the swings. And then Marcus saw a familiar face, Jacob. The 9-year-old boy from the firing range. He was older now, taller, but Marcus recognized him immediately. Jacob saw Marcus at the same time, and his face lit up like a firework. "Mr. Callahan!" He ran over, his father jogging behind him. "Dad, it's him. It's the superhero." Marcus crouched down, smiling genuinely for the first time in what felt like forever. "Hey, kid. How you been?" Jacob was practically bouncing. "Good. I told everyone at school about you. My teacher didn't believe me until I showed her the video. Are you still shooting bullseyes?" Marcus chuckled. "Sometimes. When they let me." Jacob's father reached them, extending his hand. Marcus stood and shook it. The man's grip was firm, respectful. "Thank you for your service, sir, and thank you for showing my son what real strength looks like. He talks about you all the time." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "He's a good kid." "You're raising him right." Jacob tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Are you still living under the bridge?" Marcus shook his head. "No, I have an apartment now, and I'm teaching Marines how to shoot." Jacob's eyes went wide. "That's so cool. I knew you were a superhero." Marcus laughed, a sound that felt strange and wonderful. "I'm not a superhero, buddy, but I'm trying to be better." As they walked away, Jacob turned back and shouted, "You're still my hero." Marcus stood there watching them go. The sun was warm on his face. The breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass. And for the first time in a very long time, Marcus Callahan felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He pulled out his phone and looked at the calendar. Tomorrow, he had another therapy session. Wednesday, he was teaching a class on long-distance shooting. Friday, he was meeting with other veterans in his support group. He had a life again, a purpose. It wasn't the life he'd had before the wars. It wasn't the life he'd imagined, but it was his, and it was enough. That night, Marcus returned to the I-95 bridge one last time. He climbed down the embankment carefully and stood in the spot where he'd slept for 4 years. Someone else was there now, a younger veteran, maybe 30, thin, exhausted, broken. Marcus didn't say anything at first. He just sat down next to him and pulled out the bag of food he'd brought. "You hungry?" The young veteran looked at him suspiciously, then nodded. Marcus handed him the food and watched him eat. When he was done, Marcus pulled out a card. Captain Brennan had given him extras to hand out. "There's a program on base, Lejeune. They help veterans get back on their feet, housing, medical, all of it." The young man took the card but didn't look at it. "I'm fine," Marcus smiled sadly. "That's what I said too. For 4 years." He stood slowly. "When you're ready, call that number. Tell them Deadshot sent you. They'll take care of you. He started to walk away, then stopped and turned back. "And brother, you're not alone, you're not forgotten, and you're not done yet." Then Marcus climbed back up to his truck, a used Ford Ranger he'd bought with his first paycheck, and drove home. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that second chances are possible, that heroes can be found in the most unexpected places, please subscribe to our channel. And right now, on your screen, you'll see another incredible story waiting for you. Click it, watch it, and remember, every person you pass on the street has a story. Some of them might just be legendary. Thank you for watching.